The diner buzzed with soft music and quiet chatter. Waitresses moved like clockwork, pouring coffee, taking orders, smiling politely at regulars. In the corner booth near the window, an old black man sat alone. His hands shook slightly as he lifted his coffee cup. It clinked against the saucer, just a little, but enough for the group of high school kids at the next table to notice. One boy chuckled. "Look at his hands," he whispered too loudly, like he's seen a ghost. Another boy joined in. "Maybe he's a ghost, or just another drunk." The man said nothing. He gently set the cup down and stared outside. A storm was gathering. Not outside, inside him. His name was Walter. And if they knew what those hands had held, what they had lost, they wouldn't laugh. The waitress, Carla, came over. She was maybe 30, kind eyes, tired smile. "You doing okay, Mr. Walter?" He looked at her and nodded. "Just fine, darling." His voice was soft, respectful, a little cracked from age. Carla glanced at the boys. She'd seen it before. The laughter, the whispers, the ignorance. "Ignore them," she said gently. "They don't know anything." Walter smiled. "They know what they've been taught. Maybe one day, they'll learn something else." Carla walked away, heart heavy. Walter pulled out a worn notebook from his coat pocket. It was old, leather-bound, pages yellowed. He turned to a page marked with a torn corner. His hand still trembled as he traced the words. October 3rd, 1968. The jungle was louder than hell. Suddenly a voice, "Hey sir," one of the boys, the loudest, stood near his table. "Why do your hands shake like that? You sick or something?" The diner fell quiet. Even the music seemed to fade. Carla turned, ready to jump in, but Walter raised a hand. He looked at the boy, not with anger, not with shame, with calm. "These hands," he said, voice low but steady, "once held a friend as he died. These hands dug graves, wrote letters that never got sent. These hands shook not because they are weak, but because they remember too much." The boy blinked. His smirk faded. Walter continued, "Do you want to know what they remember most?" The boy nodded, unsure now. Walter slowly rolled up his sleeve. A scarred arm, skin wrinkled by age, but tough like leather. And then the number. Not a tattoo, not a name. A number burned into his skin. "This," Walter said, "was not from prison. Not from war. This was from my own country." The boy's eyes widened. "What does it mean?" Walter's eyes met his. For the first time, the boy saw them clearly, tired, sharp, ancient. "It means they used me, my body, my brothers, for testing. We were experiments." The boy stepped back. I didn't know." Walter nodded. "I don't expect you to. But now you do. So what will you do with it?" The other boys watched in silence. One of them whispered, "Is that real?" Carla stood frozen behind the counter. She'd known Walter for years, but he'd never told her this. No one in the diner moved. Time had stopped. Walter pulled his sleeve back down and stood slowly. "Excuse me," he said. "My hands may shake, but my legs still work." He dropped a few bills on the table and turned to leave. As he passed the boy, he paused. "You want to know more?" he asked softly. "Ask me tomorrow. I'll be back. If you really want to learn, I'll tell you. But if you're just here to laugh." He left the sentence unfinished. The door closed behind him with a soft chime. The boy sat down, quiet now. Carla came over. "He's not like other men," she said. "He saw things you can't imagine." The boy stared at the door. "I thought he was just old." Carla sighed. "He's more alive than most of us." Outside, Walter walked down the wet sidewalk. Rain had begun to fall, soft, gentle, like memories. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He knew the boy would return, not to laugh, but to listen. And maybe, just maybe, to understand. Because some stories don't fade with time. Some stories shake, just like hands. But they deserve to be told. That night, Walter sat in his small apartment. The walls were covered in photos, most black and white. A young man in uniform, a squad laughing in the jungle, a woman holding a child, his wife, his son, both gone now. He opened a drawer and pulled out a box. Inside was a medal, not polished, not displayed, just kept, quietly like a secret. He held it with both hands. They shook, of course, but that didn't matter. What mattered was memory. He looked out the window. The city lights blurred through the rain, and he whispered, "They think I'm just old, but I remember everything." The next morning, Walter returned to the diner. Same booth, same coffee, hands still shaking. The boy was already there, sitting across from him, waiting. No jokes this time, just eyes open wide. "I came to listen," he said. Walter nodded. "Then I'll start from the beginning." The bell above the door rang again. Another customer, but we don't see their face. Only a hand, a scar, a faded tattoo, another number, and then the voice. "You're not the only one who remembers." Walter looked up, and for the first time in years, his hands stopped shaking. Fade to black. The year was 1956. Summer heat lay heavy on the small southern town of Hartsville. The sun beat down on the rust-colored rooftops. Dust swirled in the dry wind. Walter was only 16. Tall for his age, muscular eyes sharp like flint. He walked down the narrow road, fists clenched, shirt soaked in sweat, jaw locked in silence. Everyone in town knew who he was. knew his family, knew his place or thought they did. His mother worked 2 jobs, cleaning houses and doing laundry for the white folks across the tracks. His father had died in a factory accident when Walter was just 9, or at least, that's what the paper said. Truth was, he'd been pushed, but no one was punished. Walter had never forgotten that. Not the bruises, not the silence. That afternoon, Walter stepped into Perkins' general store. He was just there for milk, but the moment he entered, silence swept the room. A group of men stood by the counter, laughing, talking low. One of them, Earl Bishop, saw Walter, and smirked. Earl was in his 20s, son of the sheriff. Big, blonde, full of poison. "Look who's here," he said loud enough for all to hear. "The colored boy thinks he can shop like he owns the place." Walter said nothing, just walked slowly to the fridge, picked up the milk, stepped to the counter. The old cashier stared at him like he was dirt, didn't speak, just held out his hand. Walter placed a crumpled dollar and 2 coins. Earl stepped closer. "You don't say thank you." Walter looked at him, calm, quiet, but something boiled beneath the surface. "You don't say excuse me?" Walter asked, voice low. Earl's grin dropped. A second later, his hand struck Walter's cheek. Silence. Even the wind outside seemed to stop. Walter's face turned with the slap. He stood still. Then slowly, he faced Earl again. "Don't touch me," he said, almost a whisper. Earl laughed. "Or what, boy? You gonna hit me? Go ahead. Make my daddy proud." For a moment, it felt like time froze. Then, without warning, Walter's fist flew fast, hard, true. Earl fell back into a display of canned beans. Groaned, blood on his lip. Chaos erupted. The other men rushed forward. The cashier shouted, "Get the sheriff." Walter didn't wait. He ran, feet pounding the pavement, heart thundering in his chest. He didn't stop until he reached home. His mother, Ruth, was outside, hanging laundry. She saw the look in his eyes and dropped the basket. "What did you do, Walter?" He couldn't speak, just dropped to the ground, hands over his face. "They hit me first, Ma," he whispered. "I hit back." She knelt beside him, held his shaking body. "Oh, baby," she said, "in this town, your fists ain't the same as theirs." Minutes later, the sirens came. Dust rose from tires spinning fast on dirt roads. The sheriff, Earl's father, stepped out of the car, walked straight to Walter. No questions, just the butt of his gun crashing against the boy's temple. Walter woke up in a small cell. Blood dried on his forehead, his hands tied. A light flickered above him. The sheriff stood outside, arms crossed. "You're lucky I don't string you up," he said. "But I got a better idea." A week later, Walter stood in front of a judge. No lawyer, no witnesses. Just a sentence. Reform school. 6 months. Maybe it'll teach you something. But it wasn't 6 months. It was hell. Walter was shipped off to a facility 2 towns over. Mostly black kids, some Latinos. Boys who stole bread, or fought bullies, or refused to bow their heads. The guards were cruel. Food was scarce. Punishment was routine. But Walter didn't break. Not on the outside. Inside, something hardened. Every day, he did push-ups in the dirt yard. Every night, he read whatever he could get. History books, war stories. He memorized names Malcolm, Martin, Mandela, and he repeated them to himself like prayers. After 9 months, he was released. 18 now, taller, stronger, but colder. He returned home to find his mother, older than her years. Wrinkles lined her tired face. "I prayed every day," she told him, "but I knew they wouldn't let you come back the same." He kissed her forehead. "I didn't break, Ma, I just changed." But Hartsville hadn't changed. The stares were still there. The whispers, the quiet threats. Walter wanted out. One morning, he walked into the military recruitment office. The officer looked surprised. "You sure you want this?" Walter nodded. More than anything, he signed the papers. 2 weeks later, he was on a bus headed to basic training. It was hot, grueling, but Walter didn't complain. Not once. He ran faster than anyone, lifted more, endured more. But it didn't matter. He was still just a colored recruit in the eyes of the white officers. He overheard them call him the wild one, but they also admitted something else. "That kid's dangerous," one said. "He's not scared of anything." And he wasn't. Not anymore. Then came the letter. Orders for deployment. Vietnam, 1961. A jungle that swallowed men whole. Walter was assigned to a recon unit, mostly black soldiers. A few whites. It didn't matter out there. Not when bullets flew. They became brothers. Fought, bled, survived together. Walter rose fast. Became a leader. He wasn't the loudest, but when he spoke, men listened. One night during a mission, they were ambushed. Chaos exploded in green fire and screams. Walter's closest friend, Jerome, was hit. "I can't feel my legs," he whispered, blood pouring from his chest. Walter dragged him behind cover, firing with one hand, pulling with the other. For hours, he fought, killed, cried, and then silence. Dawn rose. Walter looked at his hands, bloodied raw, trembling. They never stopped shaking after that. His squad was rescued. Jerome didn't make it. Walter sat in the chopper, silent, clutching his rifle like a lifeline. Back at base, he was called a hero, but there were no medals, no articles, just paperwork. The officer said, "You did your job." Walter nodded. But inside, something cracked. Later that year, he received a mysterious order, medical reassignment. No explanation. He was moved to a remote camp, far from the front lines there. He saw strange things. Doctors in clean white coats. Soldiers strapped to chairs. Injections. Questions. Pain. Walter was one of them. He never understood what they gave him, just that it burned. And after that, the shaking got worse. Months passed. Then one night, the camp vanished in fire. Documents gone, records erased. Walter was found wandering the jungle by a rescue team. They said he was lucky to survive. He was honorably discharged, sent home, no explanation, just silence. And a scar on his arm with a number burned into the flesh. The town didn't welcome him. He wasn't the same. He looked older, sadder, and his hands, they never stopped moving. Some said he was weak. Others said he was drunk. But no one asked why. No one listened out except Carla. She was just a girl then, 18, working in the diner. She gave him coffee every morning, smiled, asked how he was, and he always said, "Just fine, darling." He never told her what he saw, until now. Back in the present, the diner sits quiet. The boy from yesterday returns, eyes filled with questions. Walter looks at him. "You want to know why I shake?" The boy nods. Walter smiles softly. "Then you'll have to hear what happened in the jungle." But just as he starts to speak, the door opens again. A man in uniform enters, tall, gray beard, and on his arm, another number. He looks at Walter. "Been a long time," he says. Walter stands slowly, eyes wide. "Marcus?" The man nods. "You thought you were the only one, huh, Walters?" Hands tremble harder now, not from fear, but recognition. The boy watches in silence. Something big is coming. Something buried is about to rise. Fade to black. The diner air felt heavier than usual. The coffee steamed between them, untouched. Walter stared at the man sitting across from him like he was seeing a ghost. It had been over 40 years since Vietnam, since the jungle, since the fire that wiped everything out. Yet here he was, Marcus, older, gray in the beard, eyes dull but alive. On his arm, that same burned number, just like Walter's. The boy who'd returned to hear more of Walter's story, now sat in silence, caught in a moment too big for him to understand. Walter finally broke the silence. "I thought you were dead," Marcus chuckled softly. "You thought wrong, brother." The two men shook hands. Their grip was firm, but it trembled, two sets of shaking hands, bound by something deeper than time. The boy leaned forward. "You were in the same place, the jungle camp." Marcus nodded. "We all were. They told us it was special treatment. They didn't say we were the ones being tested." Walter rubbed his forehead. "I still don't know what they gave us." Marcus leaned back, sighing. "I found out. Took me 30 years, but I found out." Walter sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" Marcus reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. He slid it across the table. "This is a classified debrief from a guy I met who used to work in Army Medical Intelligence. He tracked the camp, the names, the test group. We were part of something called Project Stillwater." Walter opened the paper with shaking fingers. Pages filled with blacked out lines, but enough to read. "Neurological field enhancement. African American subjects. Exposure to serum. Long-term observation." His mouth went dry. "They were using us." Marcus nodded slowly. "Watching what the war did to us, how far they could push before we broke." The boy whispered, "Why would they do that?" Walter didn't answer. He couldn't. His stomach churned. All these years he thought it was the war, the trauma, that made his hands shake. But now, it had a name. Marcus leaned forward. "After the camp burned, I was captured. The North Vietnamese held me for 18 months. When I came back, I wasn't the same. My wife didn't recognize me. My son was scared of me, and when I asked for help, he shook his head. They gave me pills, told me to forget." Walter felt rage rise in his throat. "You never told anyone." "Who would believe me?" Marcus replied. "We were just experiments. File numbers. Dispensable." The boy stood slowly. This is crazy." Walter looked at him. "It's real." He tapped the paper. "And they still haven't paid for it." Marcus looked at Walter. "That's why I found you. I've been tracking others, men from our squad. Some are dead, some are lost. But there's one, still out there. And he's not hiding anymore." Walter narrowed his eyes. "Who?" Marcus hesitated. "Jenkins? Remember him?" Walter blinked. The name hit him like a wave. "You mean Doc Jenkins?" "Yeah," Marcus said. "He's alive, and he has something. A journal. He wrote everything down. Names, times, experiments. If we find him," Walter finished the sentence, "we prove what they did to us." The boy looked between them. "You're going to find him?" Walter nodded. "We have to." That night, Walter sat at his desk, flipping through the old notebook again, pages filled with memory. But now, every word had new weight. Every face in those faded photographs was more than just a memory, it was evidence. He turned to a page marked the 11th of June 1962. Jenkins, injected with test batch E, showed signs of tremors, hallucinations. Said he could hear things before they happened. He saved my life that night. Knew the ambush was coming. Walter shivered. Was it the serum? He muttered, or something else. The next morning, Marcus picked him up in a rusted pickup truck. They didn't say much, just nodded. The boy, curious and now emotionally invested, waited at the diner. Walter had promised he'd come back with the whole story one day. They drove 4 hours, through rural Georgia, past fields where crops had long since died, into a town called Whitley. Marcus had traced Jenkins here through an old VA clinic report. When they arrived, it was near sundown. The place felt like a ghost town, boarded windows, quiet streets. They found the house, Jenkins's last known address. Walter knocked. Nothing. Again, still nothing. Marcus tried, the knob, it creaked open. Inside, dust floated in golden rays of sunlight. The air smelled like paper and damp wood. They moved through the small living room, photos on the wall, medals untouched. Then they found him, not dead, sitting in a chair, asleep, head tilted. When Marcus spoke, Jenkins, the man, stirred. His eyes opened, slowly clouded, uncertain. But then, recognition. Marcus. Walter, he said, voice cracking. It's been a long time. They helped him sit up. He was frail, a shadow of the medic they remembered, but his mind was sharp. You came for the journal, he said. Walter nodded. You kept it. Jenkins reached under his chair and pulled out a thick, leather-bound book. Everything's in here, he said. Everything they did. Every injection, every test, every name. I couldn't forget. Marcus took the journal with trembling hands. Walter scanned the pages, diagrams, notes, hand-drawn maps, and then a page that froze him. Subject: WR, injected with second-stage serum, batch F result, tremors, cognitive flashbacks, hypersensory awareness. Walter stared. That's me, Jenkins nodded. They weren't just watching us, they were changing us. Walter dropped the book. His breath caught in his chest. And they still are, Jenkins added. They never stopped. Stillwater was just the beginning. There's another name now. Clean Horizon. A new version, new subjects, new rules. Marcus looked furious. Where? Jenkins hesitated. A facility outside Baton Rouge, hidden under a health research center. They moved underground. Walter stood. We need to go there. Jenkins raised a weak hand. Careful. They're not protecting files anymore. They're protecting secrets, and they don't let people leave. Marcus and Walter exchanged a look. We've made it out of worse. But as they turned to leave, a sharp noise rang out, tires screeching outside. They peeked through the curtain. A black SUV pulled up. Men in suits stepped out, armed. Walter grabbed the journal. They found us. Jenkins stood, panic in his voice. Go, back window, I'll stall them. Walter froze. No, we're not leaving you. But Jenkins shoved them. I'm a ghost, Walter. I've been dead for years. You're the voice now. They escaped out the back as the front door crashed open. Gunshots echoed behind them, and Walter didn't look back. They ran through an alley, down a gravel road, heartbeats in sync. They didn't stop until they reached the truck. Marcus started the engine, wheels spinning in dust. Walter sat beside him, breathless, journal clutched to his chest. They killed him, he whispered. Marcus nodded. They're going to kill us too, unless we expose them first. Back at the diner, the boy sat alone, wondering if Walter would ever return, and then the door opened. Walter, dirty, sweating, eyes wild. He walked up to the boy and dropped the journal on the table. You wanted the truth? He said. Now you've got it. Fade to black. The diner air felt heavier than usual. The coffee steamed between them, untouched. Walter stared at the man sitting across from him like he was seeing a ghost. It had been over 40 years since Vietnam, since the jungle, since the fire that wiped everything out. Yet here he was, Marcus, older, gray in the beard, eyes dull but alive. On his arm, that same burned number, just like Walter's. The boy who'd returned to hear more of Walter's story, now sat in silence, caught in a moment too big for him to understand. Walter finally broke the silence. I thought you were dead, Marcus chuckled softly. You thought wrong, brother. The two men shook hands. Their grip was firm, but it trembled, two sets of shaking hands, bound by something deeper than time. The boy leaned forward. You were in the same place. The jungle camp. Marcus nodded. We all were. They told us it was special treatment. They didn't say we were the ones being tested. Walter rubbed his forehead. I still don't know what they gave us. Marcus leaned back, sighing. I found out. Took me 30 years, but I found out. Walter sat up straighter. What? Do you mean? Marcus reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. He slid it across the table. This is a classified debrief from a guy I met used to work in Army Medical Intelligence. He tracked the camp, the names, the test group. We were part of something called Project Stillwater. Walter opened the paper with shaking fingers. Pages filled with blacked out lines, but enough to read. Neurological field enhancement. African American subjects. Exposure to serum. Long-term observation. His mouth went dry. They were using us. Marcus nodded slowly. Watching what the war did to us, how far they could push before we broke. The boy whispered, why would they do that? Walter didn't answer. He couldn't. His stomach churned. All these years he thought it was the war, the trauma, that made his hands shake. But now, It had a name. Marcus leaned forward. After the camp burned, I was captured. The North Vietnamese held me for 18 months. When I came back, I wasn't the same. My wife didn't recognize me. My son was scared of me, and when I asked for help, he shook his head. They gave me pills, told me to forget. Walter felt rage rise in his throat. You never told anyone. Who would believe me? Marcus replied. We were just experiments. File numbers. Dispensable. The boy stood slowly. This is crazy. Walter looked at him. It's real. He tapped the paper. And they still haven't paid for it. Marcus looked at Walter. That's why I found you. I've been tracking others men from our squad. Some are dead, some are lost. But there's one, still out there. And he's not hiding anymore. Walter narrowed his eyes. Who? Marcus hesitated. Jenkins? Remember him? Walter blinked. The name hit him like a wave. You mean Doc Jenkins? Yeah, Marcus said. He's alive, and he has something. A journal. He wrote everything down. Names, times, experiments. If we find him, Walter finished the sentence. We prove what they did to us. The boy looked between them. You're going to find him? Walter nodded. We have to. That night, Walter sat at his desk, flipping through the old notebook again, pages filled with memory, but now, every word had new weight. Every face in those faded photographs was more than just a memory, it was evidence. He turned to a page marked the 11th of June 1962. Jenkins injected with test batch E showed signs of tremors, hallucinations. Said he could hear things before they happened. He saved my life that night. Knew the ambush was coming. Walter shivered. Was it the serum? He muttered, or something else. The next morning, Marcus picked him up in a rusted pickup truck. They didn't say much, just nodded. The boy, curious and now emotionally invested, waited at the diner. Walter had promised he'd come back with the whole story one day. They drove 4 hours, through rural Georgia, past fields where crops had long since died, into a town called Whitley. Marcus had traced Jenkins here through an old VA clinic report. When they arrived, it was near sundown. The place felt like a ghost town, boarded windows, quiet streets. They found the house, Jenkins's last known address. Walter knocked. Nothing. Again, still nothing. Marcus tried. The knob, it creaked open. Inside, dust floated in golden rays of sunlight. The air smelled like paper and damp wood. They moved through the small living room, photos on the wall, medals untouched. Then they found him, not dead, sitting in a chair, asleep, head tilted. When Marcus spoke, Jenkins, the man, stirred. His eyes opened, slowly clouded, uncertain. But then, recognition. Marcus. Walter, he said, voice cracking. It's been a long time. They helped him sit up. He was frail, a shadow of the medic they remembered, but his mind was sharp. You came for the journal, he said. Walter nodded. You kept it. Jenkins reached under his chair and pulled out a thick, leather-bound book. Everything's in here, he said. Everything they did. Every injection, every test, every name. I couldn't forget. Marcus took the journal with trembling hands. Walter scanned the pages, diagrams, notes, hand-drawn maps, and then a page that froze him. Subject, WR, injected with second-stage serum, batch F result, tremors, cognitive flashbacks, hypersensory awareness. Walter stared. That's me, Jenkins nodded. They weren't just watching us, they were changing us. Walter dropped the book. His breath caught in his chest. And they still are, Jenkins added. They never stopped. Stillwater was just the beginning. There's another name now. Clean Horizon. A new version, new subjects, new rules. Marcus looked furious. Where? Jenkins hesitated. A facility outside Baton Rouge, hidden under a health research center. They moved underground. Walter stood. We need to go there. Jenkins raised a weak hand. Careful. They're not protecting files anymore. They're protecting secrets, and they don't let people leave. Marcus and Walter exchanged a look. We've made it out of worse. But as they turned to leave, a sharp noise rang out. Tires screeching outside. They peeked through the curtain. A black SUV pulled up. Men in suits stepped out, armed. Walter grabbed the journal. They found us. Jenkins stood, panic in his voice. Go, back window, I'll stall them. Walter froze. No, we're not leaving you. But Jenkins shoved them. I'm a ghost. Walter, I've been dead for years. You're the voice now. They escaped out the back as the front door crashed open. Gunshots echoed behind them, and Walter didn't look back. They ran through an alley, down a gravel road, heartbeats in sync. They didn't stop until they reached the truck. Marcus started the engine, wheels spinning in dust. Walter sat beside him, breathless, journal clutched to his chest. They killed him, he whispered. Marcus nodded. They're going to kill us too, unless we expose them first. Back at the diner, the boy sat alone, wondering if Walter would ever return, and then the door opened. Walter, dirty, sweating, eyes wild. He walked up to the boy and dropped the journal on the table. You wanted the truth? He said. Now you've got it. Fade to black. Rain pelted the roof of the old motel like bullets. Walter sat at the edge of the bed, shirt clinging to his back, his hands trembling worse than usual. The journal lay open on the table, its pages warped from the humidity, words smudged from rain and blood. Marcus paced near the window, glancing through the blinds every few seconds. "They'll come," he said, voice tight. "They always do." But Walter wasn't listening. His mind was stuck on the last sound Jenkins made before the gunshot. It wasn't fear, it was peace, as if he had finally let go. Walter hadn't cried in over 20 years. Not at the funeral of his mother, not at the death of Jerome, not even when his hands began to betray him. But now, in this dimly lit room, staring at a torn page scribbled with his name and a batch number, he felt a lump rise in his throat. Marcus stopped pacing. "You're thinking about staying behind, aren't you?" Walter looked up. "Jenkins died because of me." "No," Marcus snapped. "He died because we were getting close. And if you give up now, they win." Walter stood. "I've been fighting since I was 16. Marcus, I'm tired." Marcus crossed the room. "You think I'm not? You think I didn't want to lay down and disappear after what they did to my son?" Walter blinked. "Your son?" Marcus looked away. "He died last year. ODD painkillers. You know why? Because he grew up watching me shake and scream in my sleep. Because the VA called me unstable and sent me home with bottles and lies. I couldn't hold a job, couldn't coach his baseball team, couldn't be the father he needed." His voice cracked. "I lost him before I even knew it." The room went still. Walter placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "Then we finished this. For him, for Jenkins, for all of us." Morning came with a fog so thick, the world looked erased. They packed the journal, burned their clothes, changed plates on the truck. Walter pulled a cap low over his brow. "Baton Rouge," Marcus muttered. "Clean horizon." On the way, they stopped by a sexy house. A woman named Lena answered the door, early 50s. Tall, sharp eyes, unshaken. "You boys look like ghosts," she said. Marcus smiled. "Close enough." She let them in, fed them eggs and black coffee. Her basement was a bunker file's photographs, maps. "I used to work for a contractor," she said. "Medical waste, mostly. One year they sent me to a facility in Louisiana. Top clearance, below ground. No windows, no names, just corridors and masks." She pulled out a photo blurry, taken from a moving car. "This is it. It's under the Calverton Health Research Building. Public upstairs, nightmare below." Walter scanned. "The map? How do we get in?" Lena sighed. "That depends. You want to expose them, or destroy them." Walter didn't hesitate. Both that night, Walter stared at his reflection in the motel mirror. His eyes looked old, older than the 60 years he had lived. His hand trembled near his cheek, then slowly moved to his sleeve. He rolled it up. The number burned there was fading, but still visible. WRF6. He remembered the injection, the burning, the days after, and then, the silence. No one ever told him what it meant, until now. He turned and found the boy standing behind him, the same boy from the diner, who'd followed them to the safe house begging to help. "Why do you still wear the jacket?" the boy asked. Walter glanced at his old army coat hanging on the chair. "Because it's the only thing they gave me that didn't lie." The next day, they parked a block away from the Calverton building. Walter, Marcus, and Lena huddled in the truck. She handed them the fake IDs and a clipboard. "You're both contractors. Pest inspection. I've cleared the logs there, expecting you." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You always this prepared." Lena smirked. "I've had 20 years to plan this." They entered at 10:04 a.m. The lobby was sterile. To clean, a woman at the desk barely looked up. "You're late," she muttered. "Elevator on the left. Sublevel 3. You'll need to scan in at each floor." Walter held up the badge. It worked. The doors slid shut. Marcus looked at him. "You ready?" Walter nodded. More than ever. The elevator hummed downward. Sublevel 1. Sublevel 2. Sublevel 3. The doors opened into a hallway so white it hurt the eyes. Cameras lined the corners. No windows, no sound. They walked slowly, clipboard in hand, pretending to check vents. Then a door opened ahead. A doctor stepped out, lab coat, security badge, tablet in hand. He glanced at them. "You're not scheduled for this wing." Walter's heart raced. Marcus stepped forward. "We got called in. Unit 12 had a complaint." The doctor frowned. "That's not on the log." Walter moved fast. Before the doctor could react, he slammed him into the wall. One clean punch. To the throat. The man crumpled. "Check his badge," Walter said. Marcus grabbed it. Full access. They dragged the body into a storage closet, locked it, then swiped into Unit 12. The moment the door opened, the smell hit them. Antiseptic, sweat, desperation. Rows of glass walls. Inside people, men, women, even a teenager, hooked to IVs. Monitors beeped, some mumbled, some sat still, eyes blank. Walter pressed his hand to the glass. One woman stared back, black hair, bruises under her eyes, and the number S3H burned on her arm. "They're still testing," he whispered. Marcus opened the journal, flipped to the last page. Jenkins wrote. There it was. Clean horizon. Subject classifications. S3 equals stage 3, neurological variant. High instability, often terminated. Walter's fist hit the wall. "We need to get them out." But before they could move, an alarm shrieked. Red lights flashed. A voice echoed, "Unauthorized breach. All personnel locked down." Marcus grabbed Walter. "Run." But Walter didn't. He turned and smashed the glass wall. Alarms howled louder. He pulled the woman free. "We're getting you out." 2 guards rounded the corner. Lena appeared behind them, silent, deadly. 2 taser darts fired. They dropped. "I told you they'd come," she said. They ran, through sterile halls, past rooms filled with forgotten lives. They reached the elevator. Locked? Lena punched a code. Doors opened. Marcus held the woman. Walter grabbed 2 files from a desk labeled Batch H9, pending weaponization. Then, the doors closed. As the elevator rose, silence fell. The woman whispered, "They lied to us. Said we were helping cure PTSD. Walter looked at her. "You were the cure. They were just sick." They exited into chaos, fire alarms, security pouring in. But outside, Lena's van waited. They piled in and drove fast. No words. That night, they regrouped in a different motel, miles away. Walter stared at the files. Pages of charts. Military funding memos. One line stood out. Human enhancement trials deemed ineffective. Subjects classified as unstable, recommend disposal. Walter whispered, "They were going to kill them all." Marcus nodded. "Unless we stop them." Walter opened the journal again. Jenkins had written a single line at the end, in trembling ink. "If you're reading this, you survived for a reason." Walter stood. "Then I know what to do." The boy, silent until now, finally asked, "What happens next?" Walter looked him in the eye. "We go public." The boy blinked. "But they'll come after you." Walter smiled, sad and steady. "They already are." Outside the window, 2 black SUVs rolled past. Fade to black. The motel room was dim, lit only by the flicker of a muted television that no one was watching. Rain tapped on the windows like a warning. Walter stood near the desk, flipping slowly through Jenkins's journal while Marcus cleaned the dried blood off his sleeves in the bathroom sink. The rescued woman, her name was Layla, lay, resting on the second bed, her face pale, eyes hollow. The boy, still too young to carry what he now knew, sat silently on the floor, back against the wall, holding his knees. "We can't keep running forever," Walter finally said. Marcus stepped out of the bathroom, drying his hands with a towel. "I'm not planning to." "You saw what's in that file? This isn't just about us anymore." Walter nodded. "Weaponizing trauma, selling it, testing it on civilians. They turned our pain into profit." Layla stirred. "They gave us pills, told us they would help us process memories. But they made everything worse." My hands started shaking, my ears wouldn't stop ringing. "One night I heard someone screaming. It was me, and I didn't even know it." Walter sat beside her. "You're out now, but we need your help. Your story is proofed." She looked at him, eyes wet. "They'll find me, just like they found Jenkins. Then we make it impossible for them to silence us," Walter said. "We take this to someone who can make noise." Later that night, in a diner, off the freeway, they met with an old journalist, Temmet Green, now retired, once famous for blowing the whistle on a Pentagon cover-up in '91. He arrived, wearing a tan coat, a skeptical look in his eyes, and a tape recorder in his hand. "Marcus said you had something that could blow up half of DC, he said flatly. Walter placed the journal, the stolen Clean Horizon files, and a copy of Layla's medical reports on the table. "What we have," Walter said, "is a story about betrayal, sanctioned torture, and a government willing to sacrifice its own soldiers." Emmett began flipping pages. His expression shifted. The further he read, the tighter his jaw became. "Jesus," he muttered. "If even half of this is real, it's all real," Marcus interrupted. "Names, dates, maps, you can verify every bit." Emmett leaned back. "If I publish this, they'll come after you. Hard." Walter smiled. "They already are. That's the point." The boy spoke up. "People need to know." I didn't believe Walter at first, but I saw what they're doing. It's real, it's evil. Emmett looked at the boy for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll do it. But I need something they can't deny. A voice, a face." Layla's hand trembled as she raised it. Mine." Walter placed his hand over hers. "Steady, we're all in this." By morning, Emmett had arranged a filmed interview. A safe studio in New Orleans. Private off-grid. Layla told her story. Walter followed. Marcus gave his testimony, holding nothing back. Then the boy, he didn't have much to say, but his final words struck deep. "They broke these people, then buried them. We're just digging up the truth." Emmett promised the piece would be live in 24 hours. "Once it's out," he said, "they won't be able to hide." But back at the motel, as the sun dipped behind thick clouds, Walter felt uneasy. Something had shifted. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was waiting. Marcus sat at the window watching the parking lot. "Too quiet," he muttered. Walter nodded. He loaded the gun Lena had given him, just in case. An hour later, the door burst open. 3 men in tactical gear stormed in, no warning, no words. One grabbed Layla. Another swung for Walter. He dodged, barely. The boy screamed. Marcus tackled the third man, both crashing into the dresser. Walter fired. One shot, then another. Glass shattered. One man fell. The others retreated, dragging Layla. Walter and Marcus gave chase, running into the dark. Tires screeched. A black van peeled out of the lot, Layla inside. Marcus raised the gun, but Walter pushed it down. "You'll hit her," he said. "They took her," Marcus growled. Again, Walter was breathing hard, heart hammering. "Then we take her back. All of them." The next day, Emmett called. They scrubbed the files. The servers I uploaded to, gone, wiped clean. "Someone's watching my accounts." Walter didn't flinch. "We keep moving." But the boy looked shaken. "They're everywhere." Marcus nodded. "Exactly. And that's why we find the last piece." Walter turned to him. "What piece?" Marcus pulled out a folded paper from his coat. "Before Jenkins died, he gave me this. A name. Dr. Eliza Hart. She designed Batch F. She knows everything." Walter took the paper. "Where is she?" Marcus stared. "She works for them. But she's not on their side anymore. She's hiding." A day later, in the heat of a forgotten Texas town, they found her in an abandoned church, sunlight leaking through cracked stained glass. She was in her 60s now, hunched, eyes tired. But when she saw Walter, she froze. "I know you," she said. Walter nodded. "I was your experiment." She lowered her head. "I was your jailer, and I'm sorry." Marcus stepped forward. "Then help us end it." She walked to a locked cabinet, pulled out a box. Inside were hard drives, paper files, and a flash drive labeled Batch F Clean Horizon Audio Plus Video. Walter picked it up. This is it." Eliza nodded. "Everything. Trial footage, orders, signed approvals, names. I kept it all, in case my conscience ever grew teeth." Walter looked at her. "Why now?" She met his eyes. "Because you're the only one still standing." He reached out. She handed him the drive. "Be careful," she whispered. "They won't just erase you. They'll rewrite you, make you the villain, make you disappear." As they left the church, the sun began to set. Walter looked at the boy. "Still think this is just a story?" The boy shook his head. "No, it's a war." That night, they sent the drive to 5 different media outlets. One to Emmett, one to an anonymous online whistleblower group, one to a trusted Senator Marcus once served under. Then they waited. Marcus kept the last copy in his boot, just in case, he said. But just before dawn, Emmett called again. His voice was shaken. "They raided my house. Took everything. I barely escaped. They know. They're desperate." Walter stood by the window. The motel across the street had just lit up with movement. SUV, same men, same suits. "It's time," he said, "to make this public ourselves." As the sun rose, Walter stepped onto a bridge just outside the city. Cameras on him. The boy, filming, Marcus by his side, Lena watching their 6. Walter looked into the lens. "My name is Walter R. Hayes. Serial 113775F. I served in Vietnam, but when I came home, I brought something back. Not just memories, not just pain. I brought the proof of what they did to us." He held up his arm, the burned number clear. "They tested on us, lied to us, buried us." He pulled out the flash drive. "This is the truth, and today, I give it to all of you." Then he spoke the names of every man in his unit, the ones who died, the ones who vanished, and the ones still broken. "We never got medals, or answers, but today, we get justice." As the feed went live, millions began watching, sharing, asking questions. The system began to shake, but just off the bridge, hidden in a parked van, a red light blinked. A sniper adjusted his scope. Walter, unaware, kept speaking, but Marcus noticed. And in a split second, he moved. One shot rang out. Fade to black. The gunshot cracked like thunder across the bridge. The boy dropped the phone. The screen landed face up, still recording, still live. Walter froze as Marcus's body twisted mid-step, then crumpled to the concrete. His hands, once strong, once steady, now shook so violently that he couldn't catch his friend. "No, no, no," he whispered, dropping to his knees. Marcus gasped, blood pooling beneath him, spreading like a shadow. Sniper Lena shouted from behind the truck, firing wildly into the hills. "We're exposed. Move." Walter ignored her. He pressed his hands against Marcus's wound. "You're gonna be okay. You hear me?" Marcus coughed. Blood spilled over his lip. I moved, so you wouldn't have to." Walter's heart was breaking. "Why? Why'd you do that?" Marcus looked up. "Because you're the one who can finish this." Then, with a weak smile, he added, "And I always hated bridges." His eyes closed. His head slumped. The feed was still live. The boy reached for the phone, hands trembling. "We have to go," he said. "Walter?" But Walter didn't move. Sirens were coming now. Black SUVs again. Helicopter blades thudded in the distance. Lena grabbed his arm. "We stay. We die." "You want Marcus to be the last chapter?" Walter looked down at his friend. Then slowly he closed Marcus's eyes. "He's not the last chapter. He's the beginning." They ran down the embankment, through marshland, into the woods, drenched in sweat and grief. For hours, they hid. The boy kept checking the phone. The stream had gone viral. 10 million views, 20 hashtags trending, headlines exploding. Black veteran exposes government cover-up. Live shooting on stream, activist dead. What is Clean Horizon? Walter stared at the screen, his reflection barely visible. It's working, the boy whispered. They're listening. Walter shook his head. No, they're watching. Listening comes later. By nightfall, they were safe. Early Lena drove them to another safe house, deeper in the woods this time, guarded by old allies and former soldiers. Some had heard the stream, some had already lost friends to the same symptoms Walter lived with every day. Word was spreading like wildfire, but so was the fear. They'll shut it down, one man said. They always do. Not this time, Walter said. This time, we burn their lies in front of the whole damn world. He sat at a small table, hands still bloody, holding the last drive from Marcus's boot. This is what he died for. Lena sat beside him. You sure you want to do this? They'll come at you with everything they've got. They already did, Walter said, voice hollow. And they took him. I won't let them take anyone else. The boy helped him set up this time, not a live stream, but a scheduled upload, encrypted, distributed to every major independent media platform, pre-programmed to post all at once. Walter recorded a final message. If you're watching this, you already know part of the truth. But what you haven't seen is what they did when we weren't looking. The drugs, the trials, the suicides, the cover-ups, and the bodies they buried under medals in silence. He paused. My name is Walter R. Hayes, and I'm not afraid anymore. The upload countdown began. 12 hours. But that night, as the forest went quiet and clouds swallowed the moon, the boy heard a noise, a twig snapping, a whisper, a light too small to be fireflies. He shook Walter awake. Lena loaded her gun. Within minutes, the perimeter guards were overrun, not by soldiers this time, but by contractors, private, ruthless. No insignificance. Weapons and orders. Bullets ripped through the trees. Walter, Lena, and the boy ran again. A final fallback, an old ranger tower deep in the forest. How long till upload? Walter gasped. The boy checked the phone. 9 hours. We hold the tower, Lena said. We give this thing its time. They climbed, every step echoing. The top room was barely bigger than a closet. From here, they could see flames in the distance, the safe house burning. Walter looked at the fire and whispered, Marcus, I hope you're watching. The night passed in flashes. Gunfire, shouts, radio static. Walter loaded his last bullet. Lena checked the window. They're coming. Then she looked at him. You know they're not here to arrest you, right? Walter nodded. They're here to erase me. Then we give them a memory they can't burn, she said. Just before sunrise, they breached the bottom of the tower. Walter held the boy behind him. When I say run, you run. Take the phone. Finish the upload if I don't make it. You're not dying here. The boy snapped. You promised. No, Walter whispered. I promised to tell the truth. That's different. He turned to Lena. Ready? Always. The door burst open. Flashes, smoke, screams. Walter fired once, twice. Lena fired back. 2 men went down, but a third charged, knocking Lena into the wall. She didn't move. Walter screamed. No. He slammed the rifle into the man's face. But another entered, hit him hard. Walter fell. The phone skidded to the floor. The boy grabbed it. The timer read, 2 minutes. He dove behind a desk, typed furiously. The man grabbed him, dragged him out. No, Walter bellowed, rising with what little strength he had. He grabbed a pipe, swung, hit the man in the back. The boy broke free. Upload IT, Walter shouted. The boy hit the final key. The bar turned green. Success. All over the world. The footage began dropping. First one platform, then another. Emails blasted, private messages, the full story, documents, names, faces, the audio, the video, a recording of Dr. Hart admitting to the testing, clips from Clean Horizon, even footage from Walter's own unit, shaking, screaming, breaking down. It was all out there now. The man holding the gun to Walter's head stepped back, looked at his earpiece. Silence, then rage. He raised the weapon. But Walter just stared. Too late, he said. The trigger clicked. Then another shot rang out. Not from the attacker, from the trees. The man dropped. Lena, bleeding but alive, stood in the tower stairwell. Told you, she gasped. Always ready. Walter rushed to her, held her up. The boy collapsed beside them, crying. Not from fear but from relief. We did it, he whispered. We actually did it. By noon, the world had changed. The president was asked to respond. Senators called for hearings. Veterans groups flooded the Capitol. Whistleblowers came forward. Clean Horizons funding was suspended. Arrests began, slowly, but they began. Walter stood on the steps of a courthouse a week later, surrounded by reporters. He wore his old army coat. His hands still trembled, but now, they trembled with purpose. A child held his hand, the boy. Now, his son, in all the ways that mattered. Are you scared? The boy asked. Walter looked around. Not anymore. Then he stepped to the microphone and spoke. Not as a victim, not even as a soldier, but as a man who refused to be erased. The courtroom lights were too bright. Walter sat at the front bench, shoulders straight, hands clasped, though they still trembled faintly. On the surface, the world was listening. But underneath, he could feel it, the cracks forming, the pressure building. The release of the Clean Horizon files had shaken the country. News anchors spoke his name like a headline: veteran hero or dangerous whistleblower. Senators called emergency hearings. Protests erupted in front of government buildings. Some people called him brave, others called him a traitor. He's lying, one general barked on live TV. No program like that ever existed. The internet said otherwise. But truth, Walter had learned, didn't win just because it was real. It had to fight. In the back row, the boy sat silently. He wore a plain gray hoodie, eyes wide, still watching everything like it might vanish if he blinked. Lena sat beside him, her shoulder wrapped in bandages. She hadn't spoken much since the tower, but her hand never left the boy's. Walter's lawyer, a man named Carter, leaned in. They're going to paint you as unstable, angry, vengeful. Walter didn't flinch. They can try. Carter lowered his voice. They're calling in Dr. Banner, the military psychiatrist. He's going to say the trauma compromised your memory, that your evidence is a delusion. Walter stared ahead. I lived it. I bled for it. Let him say what he wants. The trial began. Day 1, the prosecution attacked the file's legitimacy. These documents could be forged. The government lawyer said they were obtained illegally. This man broke into facilities, endangered lives, and released confidential information. Carter stood calmly. He exposed a system that abused its own soldiers. That's not treason, that's courage. But the judge frowned. Walter felt the air tighten. Public opinion was wild, but the court was controlled. Day 3. They questioned his past. Didn't you once get arrested in '86 for assaulting a fellow veteran? He spat in my face and said, we deserved what we got, so you hit him. No, I hugged him, then I hit the wall. Laughter. From the back, a chuckle. Then silence again. Layla testified on day 5. She sat, trembling, voice cracking, but her words were clear. They locked us in rooms with flickering lights, asked the same questions for hours, gave us pills that made us scream. My hands started shaking 2 months after batch injections began. I haven't stopped since. Then the prosecution showed a video Layla months ago, screaming in a hallway, restrained. Is this the person you want to trust? Walter wanted to stand up, wanted to scream. That's what they did to her. But he stayed silent. Let the truth speak louder. After court, Walter sat on a bench outside. The air was cool, the sky gray. Reporters camped behind barriers. One shouted, Walter, do you regret anything? He didn't even look at them. Lena sat down beside him. They'll never admit it. Not with words, Walter replied. But they already have. Every time they try to discredit us, they prove they're scared. The boy joined them. I don't get it, he said. You gave them the truth. What else do they want? Walter sighed. They don't want truth. They want silence dressed as order. The boy frowned. Then we screamed louder. That night, Walter received an envelope, no return address. Inside a USB drive and a note. You missed something. Walter stared at it for a long time. Plugged it into Lena's offline laptop, a video. Grainy, black and white. A man in a lab coat. Batch F. Subject 113775F. Reacting poorly to latest injection. Memory bleed, increasing. But aggression response, promising. The screen flickered. The man turned toward the camera. Walter froze. It was Dr. Banner, the same psychiatrist testifying against him now. Younger, but unmistakable. He was part of the program, not just observing it. Running it. Walter showed the footage to Carter. This is the break, Carter whispered. This isn't just exposing the program, this ties one of their lead witnesses directly to it. If we verify this, we turn the entire trial upside down. But Walter wasn't smiling. They'll come harder now. Banner won't just lie, he'll try to bury us. Then we make this public before he can. The next morning they uploaded the video anonymously. By noon, #Banner lied was trending globally. Talk shows aired it, activists reposted it. Veterans demanded answers. On day 10 of the trial, Banner took the stand, visibly shaken. Carter played the clip. Do you deny that's you? Banner stammered. It's heavily edited. Taken out of context, you said this program never existed. I was told to supervise. I wasn't. You weren't what? Doctor torturing soldiers? Selling their pain? Banner broke down. We thought it would help. Was the only way to understand trauma. We were trying to fix it. Walter stood. The judge allowed it. You didn't want to fix us, he said, his voice calm, cold. You wanted to own us. You thought if you could map our pain, you could market the cure. But you didn't fix anything. You broke us more. Banner looked away. I'm sorry. Tell that to Marcus, Walter replied. The courtroom shifted, a silence deeper than any before. Then murmurs. Then one woman stood, a mother of a veteran. Then, a second, a father. One by one, people stood. Some crying, some holding pictures. Carter whispered. They're not just hearing you, they're believing you. Still, the court didn't rule in his favor, not completely. Walter wasn't convicted, but he wasn't cleared either. Moral justice achieved, but legal status undecided. The headlines read, but it didn't matter. The country had seen too much. Congress opened an investigation. Clean Horizon dissolved. Arrests spread across departments, and Walter kept became the symbol, not a hero, not a saint, just a man who refused to be silent. Weeks later, he stood in a park named for veterans. The boy ran ahead, laughing. Lena watched nearby, healing slowly. Walter leaned against a tree. A woman approached, young, brown skin, sharp eyes. Mr. Hayes. He nodded. I'm Maya, my brother. He was in Batch G. He didn't make it, but he kept journals, like Jenkins. She handed him a notebook. I think he'd want you to have this. Walter took it. Thank you. She turned to leave, then stopped. You weren't just a soldier, you were the alarm clock. Walter opened the notebook. Page 1 read, if anyone ever reads this, it means I'm gone, but the truth isn't. Follow it. Share it. Finish it. Walter looked at the sky, sunlight breaking through clouds. Marcus, he whispered, we're not done yet. Walter sat alone that night, under the dim light of a single lamp in the corner of the safe house. Outside, the wind rustled the trees like whispers. In front of him, the worn leather-bound journal Maya had given him sat open on page 1. The paper smelled of age and dust, but the ink was still bold. The handwriting urgent. Marcus's name appeared 3 times in the first paragraph. Walter's chest tightened. He turned the page. Then another. Then another. Batch G wasn't just another experiment. It was the prototype. The earliest version of the Clean Horizon trials. Except it wasn't government-funded. It was private. International. The first few entries came from a young man named Ezra, Maya's brother. He'd been recruited for what he thought was PTSD rehabilitation, a chance to rebuild myself, he wrote. They told me I'd walk out cleaner, stronger, better. What they meant was, I wouldn't walk out at all. Walter read through the night. Dozens of entries. Details about injections. Memories lost. Dreams twisted. One phrase repeated over and over, Viogen. It wasn't mentioned in the Clean Horizon files. Not once. At dawn, Walter called Lena. She met him in the back room, rubbing her eyes. You haven't slept. Read this, he said, handing her the journal. By the 4th page, she was wide awake. Viogen, I've heard that name. From where? Before the army. When I worked IT for a private contractor. We did server maintenance for a client in Brussels. I wasn't allowed near the core files, but that name stuck with me. We need more than a name, Walter said. We need proof. Lena nodded. Let me make a call. 3 days later, Lena returned with a name, Pascal Nuri, Belgian. Former Viogen employee, whistleblower turned recluse. He lives off-grid in southern France. If anyone knows what Viogen did before Clean Horizon, it's him. Walter didn't hesitate. Then that's where we go. It's dangerous, Lena warned. You step outside the U.S., you lose what little protection you have left. I also lose the leash, he replied. Let's go. The boy stayed behind with Maya. I want to come, he'd said. Walter knelt beside him. You already did. More than most grown men. But this part, I need you safe. Just in case I don't make it. The boy didn't cry, he just nodded. Then hugged Walter tighter than he ever had before. Come back, he whispered. Please. France was colder than Walter expected. The mountains near Provence were quiet, blanketed in mist. It took Lena days to track Pascal's cabin. When they found it, it looked abandoned. Rusted roof, broken fence, no signs of life until a red laser dot appeared on Walter's chest. You have 10 seconds to leave. A voice growled through hidden speakers. We're not here to hurt you, Lena called out. We know about Viogen, about Bak's G silence. Then the door creaked open. A gaunt man in his 60s appeared, gray hair tied back, a scar slicing across his temple. Who said that name? They showed him the journal, the video, the stream. Pascal didn't blink. I warned them this would happen. He let them in. Inside, the walls were covered in maps, files, photos, conspiracy boards that made Lena dizzy just looking. Viogen was never just about soldier psychology, Pascal said. It was about mapping fear, creating a database of trauma responses, how people react under pressure, how far they break, how easily they submit. Walter frowned. Why? Pascal turned to him. So it could be sold. To governments? To corporations? To anyone who wanted to engineer control. Walter leaned forward. You're telling me they didn't want to help us. They wanted to program us. Pascal nodded. Clean Horizon was just a test field. The real product was digital, fear patterns coded into algorithms. You don't need a bullet to control a population anymore. Just a fear trigger tailored to their trauma. Walter's hands clenched. That's evil. That's profit, Pascal replied. He showed them something else. A folder marked Cascade Protocol. Inside were plans for a launch. Something scheduled in less than 2 weeks. A digital event, coordinated through dozens of platforms, embedded in major news outlets. It'll look like random headlines, videos, even ads, Pascal said, but the triggers are hidden in the content. Anyone who's been part of a conditioning group, Batch G, Batch F, others, they'll feel it. Panic attacks, seizures, violence. It's designed to cause chaos. And then someone swoops in with the solution. Walter stared at the page. Let me guess. Viogen. Pascal nodded. We have to stop it. They began gathering evidence. Pascal had archives, server logs, employee statements, But they needed access to Biogen's new AI systems to prove the Cascade Protocol. That meant breaking into a data center in Marseille. You'll never get in, Pascal warned. Not without help. Then we get help, Walter said. Lena made more calls. Former hackers, ex-military Bixie, people who owed her favors or owed Walter respect. On the eve of the infiltration, Walter stared at a photo of Marcus in his wallet. You'd hate this, he muttered. All cloak and dagger. Then, softer, wish you were here anyway. Lena touched his shoulder. He is. The break-in was chaos. Not bullets but wires, firewalls, surveillance. A race against time. Walter and Lena reached the server core just as security was closing in. They uploaded the virus Pascal built, data mirror that would copy everything tied to Cascade and beam it to encrypted backups around the world. As guards flooded the hallway, Walter turned to Lena. Go get the data out. Not without you. I'm buying you 5 minutes. Don't waste it. She hesitated, then kissed his forehead. You're a stubborn old bastard. Tell me something I don't know. She vanished into the vents. Walter faced the door alone. When they broke through. He didn't fight. He let them take him. Back in the U.S., headlines exploded again. Walter Hayes arrested in France. Terrorist or hero? The boy watched every news cycle. Maya held his hand. He's not gone, the boy said. He's starting over. Lena returned days later, bruised, tired, but carrying a flash drive. They uploaded the Cascade data. This time, there was no slow leak. This time, they named names. Viogen. Investors. Partner governments, and the planned psychological attack on vulnerable populations. The world reeled. France released Walter under global pressure. He returned not to a jail cell, but to a stage. An international tribunal had begun hearings on psychological warfare ethics, and Walter was the first civilian to testify. He stood tall. His hands trembled, but not from fear. And when he spoke, the world listened. The room wasn't a courtroom, but it was colder. The International Ethics Tribunal had no jury, no applause, no outbursts, just silence. Sharp, sterile silence. Walter stood at a long metal table with one mic and 5 seats across from him, each filled with someone who didn't flinch. One from the UN, one from the WHO, one from the World Security Council. 2 others private. Walter recognized one immediately. Evelyn Hart, CEO of Viogen, woman behind every shadow he'd chased. Her eyes didn't blink. Her lips didn't move. She stared at Walter like he was an equation she already solved. Mr. Hayes, said the lead investigator, a woman named Ria Sato, you've been granted witness status for this hearing. You are not on trial here, but your credibility is. Walter nodded. Understood. Do you understand that your testimony will implicate government officials, private investors, and multinational agencies? Yes. Do you swear to tell the truth? I've got nothing left but the truth. They began with questions about Clean Horizon. Walter described it all: basic training. The drugs, the night terrors, the memories that weren't his. We were turned into machines, and when the machine parts stopped working, they tossed us. Can you prove you were subjected to unauthorized psychological conditioning? The videos, files, the others. They all say the same thing. How did you obtain this material? Risked everything. Lost almost everything. And you leaked it. I released it. I won't call telling the truth a crime. Ria Sato leaned forward. Let's move to V. You claim their involvement in pre-Clean Horizon experiments and a planned global psychological operation called Cascade Protocol. Walter slid the flash drive forward. That's every server log from their Marseille site. Authenticated, time-stamped, with names, dates, everything you need. You accessed this illegally. What's illegal when lives are at stake? That's for the tribunal to decide. Then came Evelyn's turn. She finally spoke. Mr. Hayes, I'm curious. How does it feel to be the world's loudest liar? Her voice was soft, too calm. Walter didn't blink. Like truth finally got tired of waiting. You accuse my company of crimes based on stolen documents and altered footage. I accuse your company of hurting people who trusted you to heal them. Biogen was researching solutions to trauma. The brain is messy. Not all tests succeed. You called those failures acceptable casualties in your own memos? He pulled out a page. Read it aloud. If collateral remains under 3%, PR fallout can be managed. Evelyn smiled faintly. Context matters. Mr. Hayes, so does conscience, he snapped back. She leaned back. Let me guess. You want us all behind bars? You want some giant apology? No, Walter said. I want the truth to be loud enough that no one ever silences people like Marcus again. Ria raised a brow. Marcus, my friend, my brother, he was in Bachev. You saw the video. He didn't die from enemy fire. He died because someone wanted to see how fear rewires the brain. Silence. They paused the hearing for review. Outside, Walter sat on the stone steps. The boy came running up the path. Maya behind him. You looked scary in there, the boy said. Like Batman. Walter chuckled. Batman didn't shake this much. The boy touched his hand. It doesn't matter. You're still fighting. Walter looked over the city skyline. I think the fighting's just getting started. Later that night, Lena found him in the hotel courtyard, sitting in the rain. They'll delay a ruling, she said. Drag it out. Hope the world forgets. Then we don't let them. You want to go public again? Not just public. Personal. He turned to her. Everyone knows numbers, statistics, but they don't know faces. Stories? That's what they're scared of. So what, another leak? No. A stream. Live. I tell everything. Raw? No filters. No edits? Just me. Them. Us. Lena paused. You could be killed for that. Or finally heard. They set it up the next day. A live stream. No media handlers. No sponsors. No politicians. Just Walter. Camera on. He sat in front of a plain black wall, wore his old uniform, his medals laid on the table, not pinned, not worn, just present. He began. My name is Walter Hayes. I served my country. I loved my brothers and sisters in arms. I believed in the mission, until I realized the mission wasn't ours, it was theirs. He spoke for over an hour, about the programs, the injections, the lies, the betrayals. He named names, showed files, played footage, then he paused, and reached for something beneath the table, a small metal box. He opened it slowly. Inside were dog tags, dozens, each belonged to someone who didn't make it out. He held one up. Marcus Reed, he was 24, could fix anything with wires and duct tape. He cried when his mom sent cookies, said they made him homesick and happy at the same time. He held another. Jenkins could write poetry in 6 languages, laughed at his own jokes, told me once that healing didn't mean forgetting. Another, Layla Thomas. She survived, not whole, still fights night terrors. Still can't stand flashing lights. He laid each tag down like a prayer. This isn't just about me. This is about every person whose voice was stolen. Every soldier who signed up to protect, and was instead tested on. Every civilian treated like a number in a spreadsheet. I'm not asking for justice. I'm demanding it. By morning, the stream had 22 million views. By afternoon, 70 million. By the end of the week, over 200 million. Veterans from around the world started adding their stories. The hashtag IAM batch spread. Like wildfire. New victims came forward. Some from Africa, some from Asia, some from inner cities who were paid to join clinical trials. Without knowing they were part of the same machine, the tribunal couldn't hide anymore. A new emergency hearing was called. This time, Evelyn Hart didn't smile. This time, she looked cornered. Ria Sato opened with one sentence. Mr. Hayes, thank you for your testimony. We have more questions. And Walter smiled, for the first time in years. Because this time, the war he was fighting was finally being heard. The tribunal room was full, not just with officials, but with eyes from around the world. Live coverage was running on every major network. Journalists lined the back. Soldiers, some in wheelchairs, some with shaking hands like Walter, stood silently along the walls. The weight of too many ghosts hung in the air. Walter sat at the same table, same chair, same cold surface beneath his hands. But today, something was different. He wasn't alone. Maya was behind him. The boy sat beside her, proud and still. Lena stood to his left, a hand on his shoulder. Across the table, Evelyn Hart had no smile left. Her lawyers whispered furiously, but her face was stiff, like a mask trying not to crack. Ria Sato began. This tribunal has reviewed the testimony of Walter Hayes, Lena Moreau, and multiple witnesses affected by Project Clean Horizon and its precursors. We have authenticated the evidence provided. We have reviewed internal communications from Biogen and partner institutions, and we have consulted third-party neuroscience and ethics experts. The room was silent. The world, watching, held its breath. We have reached a preliminary judgment. Walter's hands twitched once, then settled. Ria continued. It is the finding of this tribunal that Biogen knowingly violated international ethical standards through unauthorized psychological conditioning, data manipulation, and human experimentation under false pretense. Murmurs echoed across the room. She raised her voice. Furthermore, we find evidence of a coordinated attempt to suppress whistleblowers, alter trial outcomes, and weaponize fear-based neurodata for private and governmental gain. Lena exhaled. The boy squeezed Maya's hand. Walter remained still. Ria's next words came slowly. Effective immediately. Biogen is to be dissolved. All active projects are to be suspended. Evelyn Hart and senior board members are placed under international arrest, pending criminal charges. Evelyn stood. You have no jurisdiction. Sit down, Ria said without raising her voice. You're done. Walter's eyes didn't leave Evelyn's face. She turned to him, finale anger breaking through the cold. You think you won? You think exposing me fixes what we built? Walter's voice was low. It doesn't fix it, but now people know. And that's where fixing starts. You're naive. You're finished. She didn't reply. Security approached. She didn't resist. She just walked, shoulders still straight, into the back room, disappearing, not in darkness but in full view. The room erupted, but Walter didn't hear it, because Ria wasn't done. One final item, she said. Mr. Has your methods, while effective, violated multiple international security protocols, including unauthorized access to foreign data centers. While this tribunal will not pursue charges, other jurisdictions may. There is currently a request for extradition to France and a sealed case in the U.S. Department of Defense. Maya stood up. No. He exposed the truth. The boy stood, angry. He's a hero. Rhea raised a hand. We agree. But the law is not just built for heroes. Walter stood slowly. I knew this might happen, he said. I don't want immunity. I don't need protection. Lena stepped forward. We'll fight this. We'll appeal. No, Walter said. I walked through fire to make sure they couldn't hide. I'm not gonna hide either. Rhea looked at him carefully. There is an alternative. Silence. She continued. Some whistleblowers have been granted placement in a global witness protection intelligence initiative. It is not a prison, but it is not freedom in the traditional sense. It means starting over completely. New identity, new location, no public communication, no contact with the life you've built. Walter glanced at Maya. The boy stared at him, eyes wide. You mean disappear? Walter asked. We mean live, quietly, safely, fully protected, but never again as Walter Hayes. And the other option, extradition, and most likely to... He looked at Lena. Then Maya. Then the boy. It felt like the air in the room thinned. He took a breath, then walked over to the boy, knelt down. I promised I'd come back, he said softly. The boy nodded, eyes filling. You did. Walter smiled. I need you to do something for me now. Anything. Remember me. He pulled off his dog tags, placed them around the boy's neck. You carry this now? You carry us. You tell them when they forget. You scream it if you have to. The boy whispered, I will. Walter hugged him hard. Maya cried quietly. Walter looked at her and said, only thank you. Then turned to Lena. You'll make sure they don't bury this again. She nodded, her voice cracking. I swear it. He walked back to the table. Faced Rhea. I'll take the new life, he said, but I want one condition. What is it? I don't want a new name. She frowned. That's the first rule. I don't care what you put on the paperwork, Walter said, but wherever I go, I'll still be Walter Hayes, because that name stands for something now. Don't get to erase that. Rhea hesitated, then gave the smallest nod. It's done. They let him out. No handcuffs, no chains, just silence. As Walter walked past the boy, he didn't stop, didn't turn, didn't break, because if he had, he would have stayed. The world watched as the man who changed everything disappeared, but he didn't vanish, not really, in schools. Kids read about what he did. In veteran centers, support grew like wildfire. Batch G survivors were compensated. Biogen victims were named, and once a year, a boy wore a worn pair of dog tags. And told Walter's story again. Not with bitterness, but with pride, because some legends don't need statues, just the truth, and someone brave enough to carry it. The wind was gentle across the hills of a small unnamed village near the Polish border. The grass moved like memory, soft, scattered, and full of something unseen. There was a small house there, white walls, one crooked antenna, a vegetable patch, and a wooden bench facing the east. Every morning, a man sat there, hands wrapped around a chipped mug, fingers trembling slightly, not from fear, not from weakness, just from time. He had no name in this village. Children called him the radio man. Their parents called him kind. The postman knew he never received letters, but always sent them. In fact, the only mail that ever came to him was from strangers, hundreds of them. Printed articles, notes, drawings, badges. They arrived in plain brown envelopes. No return address, but every envelope had one word scrawled at the bottom in a different language every time. Thank you. He never answered them. He didn't need to. One evening he received a package unlike the rest. No paper, just a USB drive and a photo. The picture was of a girl in a school uniform, smiling and holding a microphone. A badge on her chest read, Cognitive Freedom Youth Assembly. She stood on a stage behind a giant banner that read, Truth is louder than fear. The note simply said, You started this, but we are finishing it. The man stared at the photo for a long time, then slipped it into a drawer already full of hundreds like it. He didn't cry. Not anymore. But something tightened in his chest. A feeling not of pain but presence. Far from that village, Eli stood at the steps of the newly opened Walter Hayes Center for Ethical Innovation in New York City. It was sleek, glass-walled, filled with students, dreamers, coders, whistleblowers, and survivors. No giant statues. Just a single wall near the entrance, engraved with hundreds of names. Some known, some forgotten. And at the center, one inscription, He taught us to feel, to resist, and to remember. Eli didn't speak that day. He let others do it. Maya, now heading a support network for neurodivergent veterans, told her story of how one man stood between a frightened boy and a system built to crush him. Lena, older now, with streaks of silver in her hair, told of how trauma can become strategy. She ended with 4 words. He never gave up. And then, something unexpected happened. A man stepped forward. Part of the event, dressed plainly, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. He cleared his throat, said only, I knew Walter Hayes. He saved my brother. He didn't give his name. He didn't need to. The crowd listened. No one interrupted because stories are sacred, especially when they come from silence. The center's live stream hit 2 million views in a day. That night, Eli stood alone in the hall of Ecoza, part of the center where voice recordings of every known whistleblower played on a loop. Walter's voice wasn't among them. Until tonight. A new clip had been added, not published, not stored in any archive, but there it was, crackling. Faint, but real. His voice. I don't want to be remembered as brave, or brilliant, or right. I just want them to care. Care enough to ask the hard questions. Care enough to feel uncomfortable. To stand up even when their voice shakes. Even when their hands shake. Because if they do, then maybe I wasn't wrong. To believe in them. Eli closed his eyes. Smiled. Outside. The wind began to pick up again. Across the ocean. In that same quiet village. The man known only as the radio man listened to the echo of his own voice through an old speaker. He didn't know how they got it. He didn't care. He just listened, and for the first time in many years, he whispered, "Thank you." The next morning, the bench was empty, the mug still warm. The village doctor said it was peaceful. No pain. Just a heart that stopped because it had finally done enough. News didn't break. No headlines, no obituaries, just a sudden wave of messages around the world. People posted photos of Walter. Quotes, drawings, stories, the tags, always the tags. Worn by people, in wheelchairs, on protest signs, on the necks of little children who refused to be silent, and on one very old tree outside a tiny house near the border, someone hung a rusted pair of dog tags from a nail. No one touched them, no one ever would. Eli returned to the village. A year later, no cameras, no press. No press. Just him. He sat on that same bench, ran a hand over the wood, and pulled something from his pocket. A folded letter. Unopened. He had received it a month before. No sender, no explanation, just one line, inside in. Walter's handwriting. I didn't disappear. Eli, I became part of the silence that holds the truth together. Eli read it again. And again, and then lit a match. Watched the flame eat the paper slowly, not to erase it, but to release it. As smoke rose into the sky, he whispered, "Rest now," and walked away. Behind him, wind stirred the grass once more. Memory. Like breath. Like a man who shook when he spoke, but never when he stood for the truth.